Hey everyone, welcome to our countdown of 15 things you didn't know about Flash Gordon, 1980. If you love vintage sci-fi packed with over-the-top action, outlandish costumes, and a legendary rock soundtrack, then this cult classic is definitely for you. In this video, we're going to explore some lesser-known facts about the film, ranging from casting decisions and behind-the-scenes drama to surprising production choices. So grab your popcorn, buckle up, and let's blast off into the weird and wonderful world of Flash Gordon. Number 15, Cinematographer Gil Taylor's sci-fi legacy. Gil Taylor, the director of photography for Flash Gordon, was also the cinematographer on Star Wars, 1977. Despite the vastly different tones and aesthetics, having the same seasoned professional behind the camera for both films creates an unexpected link between two iconic pieces of sci-fi cinema. Taylor's skillful lighting and camera work helped give Flash Gordon a distinctive, comic book vibrancy that set it apart from its more serious counterparts. Number 14, recognition at the Saturn Awards. Even though Flash Gordon underperformed at the box office, it was appreciated in sci-fi and fantasy circles, earning Saturn Award nominations, including Best Costume and Best Music. Although it did not win, these nominations acknowledged the film's inventive style, memorable design work, and Queen's iconic soundtrack, elements that would later help cement Flash Gordon as a cult favorite. Number 13, last-minute rewrites on set. Beyond the now legendary deleted spider sequence, the script underwent multiple revisions during filming. The creative team continually fine-tuned the balance between comedic camp and pulpy adventure, often handing actors freshly printed pages mere moments before shooting. While frustrating for the cast, this tumultuous process inadvertently led to spontaneous scenes, some of which became classic moments in the final cut. The on-set chaos even contributed to the film's unique energy, one that fans continue to embrace decades later. Number 12, Mike Hodges' surprising assignment. Once Nicholas Reg exited, Dino De Laurentiis reportedly approached several filmmakers before hiring Mike Hodges, best known for the gritty gangster film Get Carter, 1971. Industry observers were shocked to see Hodges pivot from a dark crime drama to a flamboyant space fantasy. Even Hodges himself admitted to feeling like he was venturing far outside his comfort zone, yet he ultimately embraced the campy, high-energy spirit of Flash Gordon. Number 11, Robbie Coltrane's Bling. Can you miss it? Cameo. Long before he became world-famous as Rubeus Hagrid in the Harry Potter series, the late Robbie Coltrane had a tiny role in Flash Gordon as one of Ming's palace guards. The appearance is so fleeting that few people realize it's him. Nevertheless, it stands as one of Coltrane's earliest on-screen gigs, a small footnote before his rise to stardom. Number 10, originally the character Flash wasn't a football player. In the 1980 movie, we learn that Flash Gordon is a massive football sports star, so much so that he even wears his own logo on a t-shirt. I mean, seriously, who does that? But originally, in the comics, Flash wasn't a footballer, he was indeed a polo player. Yep, polo. I guess by 1980, polo wasn't considered cool or hip enough and wasn't with the times, so it was decided to turn Gordon's sport of choice into American football. Number 9, the Batman and Bond connection. It should come as no surprise just how cheesy Flash Gordon is, considering the movie was written by Lorenzo Semple Jr., who was a writer for the 1960s Batman TV series, and, well, it doesn't get any more campy than that. Semple Jr. would also go on to write the script for the unofficial Bond movie Never Say Never Again. So yes, this writer has Batman, Flash Gordon, and James Bond under his belt. He also wrote the screenplay for the movie Papillon. Oh wait, that's actually a really dark movie. Well, yeah. Incidentally, Semple Jr. wanted to make the story more serious but was encouraged to add comedy by the movie's producer, Dino De Laurentiis. But that aside, the movie also stars many actors who had or would go on to star in Bond movies, including Timothy Dalton, who himself would actually play James Bond, Max von Sydow, who played Ming and would go on to star as Blofeld in the, as mentioned, Never Say Never Again. And Topol, who played Dr. Zarkov and also played Columbo in the Bond movie For Your Eyes Only. This entire convergence of Batman, Bond, and Flash Gordon makes for a delightfully eccentric mix of pop culture elements. The 1960s Batman series is famously associated with bright colors, exaggerated sound effects, and comedic flamboyance. Think of the iconic "pow" and "bam" layered over fight scenes. Bringing that same creative mind into a 1980 space opera is bound to yield results that are sometimes over the top, but always entertaining. Meanwhile, the Bond connection is equally telling. That franchise, though often serious, is also known to dabble in campy territory, especially in its earlier installments. It's not as far a leap as it may appear to merge that Bond flair with the comedic ambience of Batman, then drop both into the cosmic adventures of Flash Gordon. When we see Timothy Dalton as Prince Bayron, we're actually witnessing a proto-Bond in action. Dalton's take on Prince Bayron is heroic, proud, and at times humorously exasperated by Flash's antics, but one can see a bit of that cool determination that he would later bring to 007. Max von Sydow, on the other hand, radiates regal menace as Ming the Merciless, as if he's combining the poised demeanor of a Bond villain with something a bit more grandiose, a flamboyant sense of villainy that fits perfectly into a realm filled with bright-colored sets and gold-trimmed costumes. Throw in Topol, who indeed starred in For Your Eyes Only, and you have a veritable who's who of actors crossing over between multiple iconic franchises. The comedic tone, courtesy of Semple Jr.'s pen, is also an interesting topic. By the time the film was in production, Dino De Laurentiis was determined not to produce a heavy, introspective piece. He likely perceived that audiences would embrace escapism if it came with a healthy dose of humor. This comedic directive aligns with the inherent camp of the original Flash Gordon comic strips and the black-and-white serials starring Buster Crabbe. No matter how dangerous the cosmic threats, there's always an air of playful adventure in Flash Gordon stories. Lorenzo Semple Jr. enhanced that aspect, ensuring the film never lost its sense of fun. Even during the film's darker scenes, you can sense a wink to the audience, a reminder that we're here for a good time and a heroic romp. Number 8. George Lucas originally wanted to make the movie. George Lucas always wanted to make a space opera and could see the potential of bringing the faded-out genre back to life in modern cinema. Originally, he planned to make a film series based on Flash Gordon, as Lucas was a fan of the classic Flash Gordon serials. However, producer Dino De Laurentiis, who owned the rights, did indeed have a couple of meetings with Lucas. Laurentiis denied Lucas's offer of converting the old comic character into a modern movie, so instead Lucas made his own space opera-style movie serial in the form of that franchise some of you might have heard about called Star Wars. The irony is that Star Wars did indeed breathe a new life into the space science fiction genre, which then prompted Laurentiis to produce a Flash Gordon movie, making the whole story go full circle. Number 7. The search for Flash. So with the movie going into production, the search was on to find an actor who could play the great American icon Flash Gordon. The criteria would be that he had to be a young blonde man in good physical shape. Dino De Laurentiis really wanted Kurt Russell to take on the role, but Russell turned it down on the grounds that he didn't like the carefree, slapstick nature of the movie, which kind of makes sense, considering he would go on to star in Escape from New York instead. Hollywood heavyweight Arnold Schwarzenegger had expressed interest in the role, but he was turned down due to his thick Austrian accent. Finally, actor Sam J. Jones caught Laurentiis' eye in The Unlikeliest of Places, a dating show. Kurt Russell's choice to pass on Flash Gordon is a fascinating what-if scenario. The difference between Russell's eventual role as the grim, tough Snake Plissken in Escape from New York and Sam J. Jones's bright, can-do portrayal of Flash Gordon is enormous, showing just how drastically an actor can shape a movie's tone. Had Russell taken the part, the film might have been less comedic and more grounded, altering its entire dynamic. Meanwhile, Arnold Schwarzenegger was also in a transitional phase, looking for roles that could launch him into mainstream stardom, but the accent barrier was too large a hurdle for the producers at that time. The idea that they discovered Sam J. Jones, a relative unknown, through a dating show is delightfully emblematic of how Hollywood sometimes stumbles upon its leading men. It might sound improbable, but it's not unprecedented for movie producers to spot potential talent in unexpected places. Beauty pageants, modeling gigs, talk shows, and indeed dating shows have, on occasion, led to major film careers. Jones fit the physical requirements and had a certain charismatic look that signaled he could be a believable spacefaring hero. Moreover, the lack of a well-known resume meant audiences would more easily accept him as Flash Gordon rather than seeing him as an established star playing a role. Number 6, Sam J. Jones was cast because of a dating show. Sam J. Jones had very little acting experience when he was cast as Flash Gordon. He had only just previously had a small role 1 year earlier in the Dudley Moore comedy 10, along with being a Playgirl model. However, it was when Jones was on an episode of The Dating Game that he caught the eye of Dino De Laurentiis, and based on watching that episode, Laurentiis approached Jones. Thus, he was cast as Flash Gordon. And no one could say that Jones didn't go all out for the role, as he did most of his own stunts throughout the movie. He also had to dye his hair blonde to match the look of the character. He was going to wear contact lenses to give him blue eyes, but that idea was eventually scrapped. However, if the movie Ted has taught us anything, it's that Flash Gordon's voice may have been dubbed by another actor. But more on that later. Basically, who would have thought that starring in a tacky dating TV show could land you the role of a great American hero? Number 5, Communication barriers. The movie's crew was definitely split in half, with one half being Italian filmmakers and the other half being British and American. This led to some communication issues. The actress who played Dale, Melody Anderson, said that amidst all the confusion and miscommunication, the actors were stuck in the middle, not knowing what was going on or what they were meant to be doing. Supposedly, the Italian film crew thought the movie was darker, whereas the British and American crew were setting out to make a balls-to-the-wall camp fest, which probably explains why there are some scenes in the movie that are, well, surprisingly dark compared to the rest. I mean, come on, I can't be the only one who was traumatized by the death of the villain Clytus. In fact, the film crew was so lost that the famous Flash jump was improvised, as they just couldn't figure out how to end the movie. It's hard to imagine that the Flash jump was improvised, because it's become so iconic, so much so that the scene was actually put on the back of the album's cover. Look at that, that's a lot of Flash jump. Having an international production team can bring fresh perspectives and creative diversity to a film, but it can also generate chaos if the vision isn't unified. Dino De Laurentiis, an Italian producer with a legacy of grand, sometimes eccentric films, may have had one idea in mind, while the British and American crew had another. There's often a cultural nuance in comedic style, pacing, and how certain themes are depicted. Italian genre cinema at that time had a reputation for being experimental and at times darker or more visually intense. Just look at the wave of Italian horror directors or the so-called spaghetti westerns. Meanwhile, British and American crews might focus more on broad comedic beats and big showmanship typical of Hollywood blockbusters. The result is a curious blend in Flash Gordon. Some sequences are downright moody, such as the scene in which Prince Baron forces victims to stick their hands into a stump that might contain a deadly creature, or the moment when Clytus meets a rather gruesome end. Other moments, like the football fight in Ming's throne room or the comedic banter between Flash and his allies, play up the camp factor to the extreme. This tonal whiplash can be attributed in part to the confusion swirling behind the scenes. Yet ironically, the lack of a cohesive tone has become part of the movie's undeniable charm, helping to cement its cult status. The improvisation of the Flash jump underscores how sometimes iconic moments emerge from necessity or confusion, rather than careful planning. The fact that it ended up on the album cover suggests that once the filmmakers saw how dynamic and fun it looked, they recognized it as a perfect encapsulation of the movie's energy. Often, in big productions, the best results can come from spontaneous creativity rather than meticulously following a script that might be bogged down by conflicting visions. Number 4, one of the first big-budget movies to have a score by a rock band. Everyone loves the Queen music supplied for the movie, and Queen's rocking score makes an already awesome movie that bit more badass. However, Queen wasn't the original band considered to create music for the movie. In fact, Pink Floyd was originally considered to make the music of Flash Gordon, which would have been really weird and really surreal. I mean, I like Pink Floyd, and I think they're good and all, but I just don't know if they would have been able to capture the fun of the movie like Queen did. Producer Dino De Laurentiis hadn't even heard of Queen when they were first suggested. He simply asked, "Who are the Queen?" Brian May said that they had a meeting with the production members of the movie, where the band saw 20 minutes of the film. He said they instantly loved the movie and loved how silly it was, and immediately wanted to score it. Brian said, "I think this is the first heavy metal movie score ever done, and thus Queen recorded one of the most memorable themes in pop culture in the form of the Flash theme. Let's face it, because of this song, it's hard to say Flash without then screaming, ah. Seriously, try saying Flash without saying ah. Yeah, see. You can't. It's damn near impossible." Number 3, weird deleted spider scene. There was going to be a scene where Ming tricks Flash Gordon's mind into thinking that female lead Dale is, in fact, a giant spider. And this idea wasn't something that was scrapped in the early days of production either. The scene was actually very nearly shot. Actress Melody Anderson was painted green from head to toe and had massive fangs stuck to her face, along with a giant spider head put on her own head, which was apparently really heavy. It was only as the scene was being filmed that it was realized the sequence, where Flash Gordon thinks his girlfriend is a giant spider, was pointless and served no purpose for the narrative, so the scene was wisely scrapped. Wait, let me get this right, a superhero movie that features a massive spider. Quick, someone get John Peters on the phone and tell him that we have found the deleted scene for him. This anecdote might sound silly, but it's actually quite revealing about the film's shifting tone and the behind-the-scenes confusion. It appears that, at some stage, certain members of the creative team wanted to push Flash Gordon toward a darker, more surreal kind of imagery, one that would have included horrifying illusions, like seeing Dale turned into a monstrous arachnid. That certainly would have been shocking, and might have made sense if Ming were shown manipulating Flash's psyche in a more sinister manner. But in a movie that thrives on colorful camp, comedic banter, and a rock opera-style sense of fun, suddenly throwing in a giant spider hallucination might have been too jarring. Still, the fact that Melody Anderson actually underwent makeup and costume preparations for it shows how far the concept went before being discarded. One can only imagine the visuals: green body paint, large spider limbs, and fangs, all set against the kaleidoscopic backgrounds of Mongo. While it's sometimes fun to think about these lost sequences, this one was probably better left on the cutting room floor, as the filmmakers eventually decided. The reference to John Peters is a tongue-in-cheek nod to the infamous story of the producer who longed to insert giant spider battles into superhero and fantasy projects. In that sense, the scrapped spider sequence in Flash Gordon might have been an early, unintentional precursor to that idea. Number 2. There was meant to be 2 sequels. Although it's commonplace nowadays not to just make a single film but to plan a franchise, it seems that this also took place in 1980, as when Sam J. Jones got on board to play Flash Gordon, his contract was for him to star in 3 movies, making it a Flash Gordon trilogy. Sadly, however, after the disappointing performance of Flash Gordon in the cinema, the 2 sequels were scrapped. Which is sad. I mean, the movie ends totally setting up for a sequel. Jones ended up suing Dino De Laurentiis for not honoring the contract and scrapping the 2 sequels, which caused him to miss out on work that he was contracted to do. Sadly, I don't think Jones's career ever reached its full potential, as I'm not really aware of any other movie roles he starred in besides Flash Gordon. However, Jones would eventually return as Flash Gordon, somewhat, 32 years later in the Ted movies, which breathed new life into Flash Gordon and gave Jones a newfound celebration and appreciation, which is a good thing. The concept of multi-picture deals is very familiar to audiences today. Modern blockbuster franchises are often mapped out years in advance. But in 1980, it wasn't quite as common, though certainly not unheard of, to plan a trilogy unless the filmmakers were supremely confident in the property's success. The closing moments of Flash Gordon hint strongly at further adventures, especially since the iconic "The End" title card appears, complete with a question mark, implying that Ming might still be alive or that new threats could arise on Mongo. It's a classic pulp serial approach, promising that the hero's story isn't finished. The film's underperformance at the box office, however, dashed those plans. Flash Gordon found a second life on home video and through reruns on television, where audiences who might not have seen it in theaters discovered its quirky charm. By that point, though, the momentum for sequels had evaporated. The lawsuit from Jones emphasizes how complicated these things can become for actors, who might decline other projects in anticipation of sequels that never materialize. Nonetheless, the legacy of the film grew, culminating in Sam J. Jones making comedic cameo appearances in Seth MacFarlane's Ted movies, 2012 and 2015. Those cameos poked fun at the movie's camp factor and reintroduced a new generation to the joys of 1980s Flash Gordon. It's a remarkable example of how time can transform a flawed box office showing into a beloved cult piece, eventually inspiring a form of comeback for its lead actor, albeit in a self-referential comedic context. Number 1, Jones walked out of the movie. It's no secret the production of this movie was a little troubled, what with the communication barriers. However, Sam J. Jones and Dino De Laurentiis apparently really didn't see eye to eye and frequently clashed with each other on set. There was apparently an altercation that took place in which Jones ended up going to the hospital due to a cut face, with Dino De Laurentiis visiting the hospital to make sure that Jones wouldn't have any notable scars and thus would be okay to carry on playing Flash. Basically, the two just did not get along. But things escalated one day late in the movie's production when Jones walked off the set, got on a flight to LA, and never returned. Granted, most of his filming had been completed, but because Jones didn't stick around for the dubbing, another actor had to voice his character. Yep, Jones gave the character form, but due to his conflict with Dino De Laurentiis, he couldn't give him a voice. And to this day, no one knows who the Flash Gordon voice actor was. So if you're watching this and you are the person who provided the voice for Flash Gordon, then by all means step up and say loud and proud, "Hey, I provided the voice for Flash Gordon." That's the content of today's video. If you enjoy the video, give us a like, comment and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to receive more of our new videos. Thanks for watching.